Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Brick and Mortar Podcast by Hubexo. Today, I'm joined by the one and only canvassing queen, Beth Azor, CEO of Azor Advisory Services. With her decades of experience in commercial real estate and canvassing, this episode is a gem that will help you unlock better opportunities. Let's get started. Hi, Beth. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Shanice. I'm very happy to be here.
Can you start by telling our viewers about yourself and what you do?
Yes, I have been in the retail real estate industry for 39 years, and I own a small shopping center portfolio in South Florida.
Nice. So you have been dubbed the canvassing queen on LinkedIn. How did that nickname come about?
So I'm a big believer in prospecting and going out and being very proactive in trying to find tenants and businesses to lease in vacancies in my shopping centers. And I've been preaching about that for many, many years. I'm not one to sit around and wait for the phone to ring for someone to want to lease in my properties. And so I just would be on ICSC shopping, like the shopping center conference stages. And I would always talk about canvassing. And one time, a guy in our industry joked, "Oh, here comes the canvassing queen." And he really meant it kind of derogatorily. But I thought, I love that. So I actually trademarked it. And I have workshops and training classes where I literally take people out, like very large commercial real estate companies who own shopping centers hire me to train their leasing agents. And part of the training is I take them out into the community and we canvass. So I have not met anyone that's canvassed more than me. I've probably canvassed over 20,000 hours in my career. So that kind of, dubs me the canvassing queen.
That's a great story. I love that you were able to turn a negative story positive.
Yes. I'm not really sure if he remembers that he did that and that he's responsible for that. The next time I see him, I should probably tell him.
Yeah. So many people in our industry find canvassing to be challenging. What does it take to be successful at canvassing?
Really just doing it. There's no secret, there's no secret sauce. Just getting your butt out of your office and hitting the streets and walking into stores and just meeting new people. I like meeting new people. I'm not an introvert, I'm an extrovert. And I just think that I always tell everyone, between you and your next deal, between you and your next friend, between you and your next investment is a person. And you need to put yourself out there and meet them. And how fun is it for me to go into mom and pop shops all over the country, world, and get ideas and just talk and say, "Hey, love your store. Have you ever thought about opening another location?" It's super easy. But I understand, because I have a lot of people in my life that are introverts, and they would rather slit their wrists than walk into a store and cold call or canvas. So, they're very scared of it and they don't want to have any conversations or social interactions. So I appreciate that even though it's easy for me, it's hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, you're right. This is a very people-driven business, so that's a great point.
Yes.
How do you tailor your canvassing approach based on the type of property or specific audience?
So understanding your product is first and foremost. So when I am prospecting for my shopping centers that I own, I am very well versed in what the income demographic is, what the frontage is, what the space size of the vacancies are, how much parking I have, who in my market is doing well, who in my market is not doing well. So when I go to prospect, I know that if 3 art and frame stores closed in my submarket, I'm not going to prospect for an art and frame store, right? If I know that I have a sub shop killing it, doing over 1,000 square foot in sales, then maybe a Panera or a Jason's Deli or something like that, that could be similar to what they're doing would be successful. So understanding the specifics of the income demographics, the size, the frontage, who's doing well, who's not doing well, that helps tailor who you should be prospecting for to bring new tenants in. And similarly, when clients call me to coach their agents, what I ask for is I ask them, give me the site plans of the properties we're going to canvas for. I want to know the demographics. I want to know what the leasing agent thinks would be good targets for the shopping center and why. And I start to formulate a canvassing plan for that day before I even go to the city.
It's very informative. So, in this increasingly digital age, a lot of people might question the effectiveness of traditional canvassing. Do you still believe in boots on the ground canvassing? Do you still think it's effective?
I do. I think it's wildly effective because you get to see the store. So you get to see what the merchandise looks like. You get to see if they have roof leaks from like stained ceiling tiles. A lot of times, if it's a mom and pop business, you get to meet the owner. So you're going to bypass the gatekeeper very quickly. You'll get to see if there's a line out their door, or if it looks like, the merchandise hasn't been touched in months. So you'll get to see if it's a successful retailer by being in the store. I had a story once where a guy called me and he said that he wanted to open a pet store in one of my shopping centers, and it was 6,000 square feet. I'm like, wow, that's amazing, 6,000 square feet. We scheduled a showing for Monday. This was Friday. And I said, do you have other locations? He goes, yes, I have another location. He told me the address. So on Saturday, I drove up because I wanted to see the location before I showed him space. And as I'm approaching the shopping center, I see this huge store with this banner that was probably 100 feet wide. And it said, "We buy rats."
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'm telling you, Shanice, it was probably 4 feet tall and 100 feet wide in the storefront window. And I'm like, okay, not interested in having that guy lease in my property, because I guess the majority of his pet store was snakes.
No. Oh my
Now,
gosh.
had I not gone and seen the store, I would have showed space on Monday, and maybe eventually I would have figured out what he sold and decided not to go forward with it because it wasn't the kind of tenant I wanted in my shopping center. But I would have wasted a lot of time because I probably would have showed the space, talked to him, maybe give him a credit application, reviewed the credit. So it's so important to go see the stores.
Yeah. If that's not a case for boots on the ground canvassing, I don't know what is.
Yeah, you can't learn that digitally. I'm sure that was not on his website or on his Instagram, "We buy rats" sign in his window. Huge. I'm telling you, I was at the intersection of at the red light, and I could see the sign in the shopping center like 100 yards away.
Jeez. Oh. What are some KPIs real estate professionals should track to measure the effectiveness of their canvassing efforts?
Yeah, they got to track their numbers. And I don't care if it's on a spreadsheet. I don't care if it's in a little notebook. I don't care if it's on a back of a receipt. But, I used to early on in my early days, and a lot of times, people that are listening to information like this, they're early in their career. Tracking, I used to do 80 to 100 prospecting, canvassing, and cold calls a day. I would get into the office at 8. I would do paperwork. The store's open by 10, so I was out the door by 9:30. I would canvass until 4 o'clock, and then I'd go back in the office and do paperwork. And so I would and I would do that 4 days a week. So I was tracking about, 300 to 400 prospecting calls a week. When you're doing that much, you are going to create a KPI. You're going to figure out what your results are. You're going to know that for every 80 people I walk into, I'm going to get 5 leads or 10 leads. And then if you get 5 leads every day, that's 20 leads a week. And then you're going to know within a month, did I close 1 or did I close 3? And so you're going to know, how many doors do I need to walk into to get how many showings? You can't lease space without showing. So showing is the goal, to get people to come look at the space, because literally you can't go from canvas to deal. There has to be a showing in the middle. So then how many showings before you get a deal? Do you show space 10 times before you get a deal? 55? So for now, like right now, I can my results are 100 canvases will get me one showing. But by 3 to 5 showings, I'll get a deal. I'm very good on the close once I get them. And I don't want to show space to someone that's not qualified. So when I was newer, I wanted the practice showing space, because when you show space, you learn a lot, right? But I'm pretty good now about qualifying either on the phone when I get a call in or in the space if I meet the owner. So I'm not pushing for a showing because I don't want to wait. Showing takes a lot of time. And for me, I'd rather spend the time canvassing and meeting new tenants than showing people that don't have the money to close for me to close a deal with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. It's
But in the
very helpful.
beginning, when you're new, you should show space as much as possible because that's probably the best place you're gonna learn.
Yeah. Can you share a memorable canvassing success story and what specific details led you to that win?
One of my favorite, I have so many. I have so many great, but this is an early one, and probably back then was probably one of my proudest moments. So I had a shopping center that had destination space in the elbow in the corner. Not only was it in the corner, but there was a building in front of it blocking it. So zero visibility and exposure. It was a Winn-Dixie anchored shopping center. And it was raw space, not built out, sand floor, no air conditioning, just terrible space. And I wanted to put, we had 6 new golf club communities that popped up in the area. Remember, I told you learning about your demographic and understanding who your customer is. So I thought a golf store would be great. So I identified 10 golf stores in Palm Beach County. I went and visited all of them. And I walked into one that was Nevada Bob's, and he was in a freestanding building, 3,000 square feet. And he was about 2 miles from my shopping center. But when I walked in, again, this is why boots on the ground are so important. He was bursting at the seams, like merchandise everywhere. And I said, and the first thing I had to find out is, did he own the building? Because if he owned the building, a high level of likelihood he was not going to lease space from me. So I found out that he was renting, and he had 2 years left on his lease. And I went in every 3 months to meet with him, Drew. His name was Drew. And for every Father's Day, I'd go in and buy my husband, I was married at the time, a Father's Day gift, an anniversary gift. My ex-husband was a golfer, so it was great. So every 3 months I'd go in, every 3 months, and every 3 months he'd go, Beth, my lease isn't up for 2 years. Like, I don't know why you keep coming in and bothering me. But it probably took me 3 or 4 visits for him to, when I walked in, for him to go, oh, Beth from Boynton Trail Center. Like, until they can connect you when you walk in the door with what you're selling, you haven't made an impact. So it took me 3 or 4 visits before he connected me when I walked into the door, Beth, Boynton Trail Center. But once I got that connection, I knew, and then he only had a year left of his lease by the time that had happened. And he said, why do you keep bothering me? I said, well, you're bursting at the seams. I have a space, 6,000 square feet. It's closer to your customer. Just come see the space. He goes, well, my lease isn't up for 2 years. I go, you've been telling me that for 2 years. I bet it's closer to 9 months now. You should, next time I come in, let me know when your lease expiration really is. And it was like 9 months. And I said, how long do you think it would take us to get you into the space? It doesn't take a month. My client's General Electric, the lease is going to take a month. So I walked through him the timeline. I said, how happy is your landlord that you're going to be moving? Is he going to give you an extension and a holdover for, cheap rent? Oh no, he'd take advantage of me. I go, so we need to, if you're interested, you need to come look. We got to do the lease. We got to build out the space, and then you got to move and go from 3,000 square feet to 6,000 square feet. We ended up doing the deal. It took me 2 years, and I learned so much in the process. I learned that I needed to connect. I learned that the timeline worked. I learned that I could use the holdover piece. I learned that I was prospecting with him about aspirational goals going from 3,000 to 6,000. I mean, my boss kept saying, "You're never getting that guy. You're never getting that guy. Why would he go in the back behind the building?" But he was a destination, a golf store with a simulator. He was a destination, and he was moving closer to his customers. So I was very, very happy when I did that deal.
Oh, that's such an inspiring story. It shows just how important like remaining proactive in outreach is. So,
Absolutely.
for brokers that want to secure more listings, what specific questions do you recommend when canvassing potential sellers and landlords?
Great question. So what I recommend for brokers to get listings are that they should be monitoring what's going on with the listing. First of all, they should identify let's say pick 5 properties that you want to manage and lease. And then you should be monitoring the success of that listing. Who is listing it? Is it the owner's son that's leasing it? Then maybe you don't have much of a luck. Maybe the owner wants to fire his son, but maybe not, right? So you need to understand, did they just hire CBRE or JLL and they've only been on the property for a month? They're not going to change, right? Now, if CBRE or JLL or another national brokerage firm has been on the account for a year and you've been monitoring it for a year and the management is terrible, there's potholes, lights are out at night, and there hasn't been any leasing, good time to reach out to the owner saying, "I've been, watching your property. I leased the space across the street. I've leased it to 100%. I've leased four tenants in 4 months. And I've noticed that you guys haven't had a new lease in 9 months. Next time can I fly to see you in Connecticut, or next time you're in town, can we meet?" So the most important thing is monitoring, which I don't think, and that goes back to my story about Nevada Bob's, is sticking with it and following up and having intelligence, right? So many people just pick up the phone. "Hey, are you happy with your leasing agent? Do you want to hire me?" And then the person goes, "I just hired them 2 weeks ago." And what an idiot you look like. It shows that you don't know anything about their asset, right?
Yeah.
So monitoring the assets, and then go driving through the assets. So I remember I was trying to get a listing, and I had reached out to a life insurance company, and I had been calling them and sending them, updates. And then I sent them a note, and I sent a picture of a coming soon Chipotle sign on an end cap of a shopping center. And I said, "I am so surprised you guys didn't get this Chipotle deal." And the asset manager immediately called me and said, "Oh my gosh, there's a Chipotle deal coming." And it was in the center next door to them, and they had an end cap that was better. I said, "I presume you guys were negotiating head to head with this other shopping center." He goes, "I've never heard of the deal." He hired me a month later. So I don't know what happened, but that's the kind of thing that staying in touch, feeding information on the ground. A lot of times institutions or owners hire tenant rep brokers to lease their properties. They think, "I'm going to hire the best tenant rep broker in town because they're going to bring me all of their tenants." Well, first of all, that's not a fiduciary, right? The broker has a fiduciary to the tenant to put them in the best place, not the place that they have a listing on. Second of all, owners who hire tenant rep brokers to landlord lease, that's not their expertise. Their expertise is representing tenants, but owners sometimes they're misguided with that, right? So, and a lot of times they're not in the same town. And they don't sometimes they hire the best tenant rep broker an hour away. Versus I would hire a residential broker in a small town that's going to be focused and canvas and prospect and know everything about your asset and doesn't live an hour away, that if someone wants to see space, they could be there in 10 minutes. So I think that understanding the asset that you want to lease and manage and monitoring it and sending updates to the owner would be the easiest way to get the listing.
Wow, that's incredible advice. Monitoring, that's incredible. So we've now explored direct outreach. I want to shift to another important area for networking. You're a seasoned trade show professional. What are your top 3 must-dos for getting the most out of networking and lead generation?
So not overscheduling yourself. So I think it's important to have a structure. I think it's important to have some meetings, some breakfasts, some dinners. But I don't think that the days of every 30 minutes having a meeting and not giving yourself any loosey-goosey, I called it the trade show boogie time, where you get to walk around the trade show. Like I met you at Retail Live. I was walking the trade show and you said, Beth, and now look here we are, right?
Yeah.
So you need to have some time where you walk around and learn and see new things. Because if you're just stuck in your booth all day or going to 40 other booths and you don't have time, and you might pass by some new retailer that you don't even know of and you're too busy, you can't stop and even meet them. So I think that my first rule is don't overschedule. I like structure. I do think you should have some meetings and some, coffee or breakfast. Absolutely. Number 2, I think you should do some homework and research and go on the registration list if it's available, or look on social media to see who some people, like, say, I'm going to be at this trade show, and create a list of people. I like right now, we have a trade show coming up next week, and I have 22 people on the list that I want to make sure that I see. I don't have appointments with them. These are people that I want to make sure that I stop by their booth, that I run into them at a cocktail party. But I know that if I see them down the hallway, I'm going to stop, like, excuse me, I'd love to catch up with you later. I need to go grab that guy. And I have 22 of them on my list of people that I want to make sure that I have a quick 1-minute discussion with. Now, 3 of them may not even be coming. 3 of them I may not ever run into, but having that kind of plan, it helps me have a more formulaic process at the trade show. And then lastly, I think for networking is the follow-up. So on the plane ride home, I always do my handwritten thank you notes on my little, my little note cards. And I get them done so that when I land that day, I can put them in my mailbox and get them out. And I think that not many people do handwritten thank you notes. And, emails get lost with the other 300 emails, and especially the retailer, everyone, when they get back from trade shows, especially if they've been gone for 4 or 5 days, are inundated with work. There's no way your follow-up email is even going to, make an impact. But a handwritten thank you note and mentioning something that you talked about in your meeting that they get 3 or 4 days after they come back from the show, they will notice that. So those are my 3 tidbits of advice for trade shows.
Wow, I love those. I love the handwritten note one. It's so thoughtful. And it answered my question about how can people effectively follow up with the numerous connections made at a trade show. Do you have any others, or is the handwritten note one, which is amazing? Like, I never thought of that.
Yeah, and it's just rare. No, so few people do it. I like supply and demand. I love that, and no one does that. Probably the next thing I would do if I didn't do the handwritten thank you notes is I would probably do a DM on LinkedIn. Now, 50% of the people probably aren't on LinkedIn. I probably would see when has this person posted lately, and if they never posted, since they put in their, their picture, or their, did their whatever, what signed up on LinkedIn, if they've never posted, I probably wouldn't DM them because they probably never go on LinkedIn. But if it's someone who's active on LinkedIn and I see that they've reposted other people's or shared or maybe made a comment, then I might DM them on LinkedIn, because that, again, is better than an email getting lost in 600 or 1,000 emails.
Yeah, that's good. Apart from business cards, what are some ways to make yourself memorable to potential clients or partners at a trade show?
Wearing one color that everyone recognizes you.
And you're red. I
Yeah,
remember.
people say people say, oh, I talked to someone and I wanted to ask them about retail leasing coaching, and they told me that I should find Beth. And I said, how would I find Beth? They go, well, she's a woman in red. You'll find her. So I think that, and I've coached other people. Like I had a young man and he worked in Charleston and he was a basketball player, a very tall guy. And he goes, well, I don't want to wear red. What should I do? I said, you should wear a bow tie. And then from that point on, he wore bow ties because he's a Southern gentleman from Charleston. I don't know how to, I stand out because I've done this red thing for 20 years. So if you can come up with something, there's people that wear funny jackets. It can be too gimmicky. So I'm not about gimmicky. But some people wear hats. I don't know. I'm happy that I started the red thing 20 years ago because it's really worked for me. And so many people don't want to do something because they feel that they're insecure that it's going to come off as gimmicky.
If they find the right one for them, like, I'm sure it won't be gimmicky in a professional way,
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's a guy from Dollar Tree that wears outlandish clothing, like just wild clothing. But I'm always look forward to seeing what is he going to wear.
Mm-hmm.
What is he going to wear? There's someone else that wears a lot of weird colored glasses, a woman that I know. She's always got weird colored glasses on. So, I don't know.
And it works because it makes you memorable. So
exactly.
ICSC is coming up. What kind of conversations or connections should attendees prioritize to find the best deals?
So I think that they shouldn't be worried about that. I think that they should be concentrating on being present and having good conversations with who's ever in front of them. The sign guy might be next year's Raising Cane's real estate person. So I think that they should focus on who they're speaking to at the moment, not looking past like, oh, is this a sign guy? Who else can I go talk to? I think everyone should be respectful and speak to the person that's in front of them. You can certainly you don't have to talk to the person for 20 minutes. You can speak, be present 3 or 4 minutes and then move on. But I think that is more important, being a human being and treating people with respect and not worried about who's the best person the best person you can speak to is the person in front of you.
Right. That's beautiful and well said. I love that. What is your best piece of advice for professionals who want to start canvassing more?
Just do it. Have flyers. Get a flyer for your property. If you've got a space that's got specific infrastructure, like right now I have a former urgent care with like 20 exam rooms. So doing a specific flyer showcasing or highlighting the specific infrastructure that could be beneficial and valuable to the next prospect. Like I did a former urgent care flyer and we've passed it out to 50 other urgent cares. I have 5 showings when I get back next week, just from urgent cares. So, but I remember being hired to coach with a team canvassing, and I showed up. I go, where's the flyers? They go, we don't have any flyers. I said, well, we can't go canvassing without flyers. Let's go to a Kinko's and let's get a flyer made because I'm not canvassing without flyers. Going into a space with just leaving a business card, that business card's going to be thrown in the garbage. You need to have a flyer.
Yeah. Well, those were all the questions I have had for you. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know our viewers will love this episode.
Thank you, Shanice, for having me. I'm looking forward to seeing you at future trade shows.
Of course. How can people connect with you?
Twitter, LinkedIn are probably the best, or just go to bethazor.com, my website. There's a contact me there, and you can reach out that way too. And then I have over 750 videos on YouTube. So anyone that wants more leasing, tutoring, you can find 750 free videos on YouTube.